This is Malaprop's POETRIO, and I am so excited to introduce the first three poets in this new year. My name is Mildred Barrier, and I have the greatest pleasure to introduce Paul Jones, Pat Riviere-Seel, and Aruni Kashyap, who are going to be reading this afternoon. And one of the things I've noticed about the books that these three poets have written is the way they handle the earth. The earth is very important in their work, in their poetry. And they also capture very well the human actions and how these actions impact and sometimes leave the earth bruised. And some of these actions sometimes have to do with love, they have to do with violence, they have to do with wounding. And the greatest thing, the hardest thing to do in all these three books is really saying goodbye. So we'll see how some of these goodbyes are embodied in the poems that we are going to hear. And now let me introduce Aruni Kashyap, who is a writer and translator, and he speaks so many languages. So he's one of those blessed multilingual people. He is the author of His Father's Disease and a novel, The House with 1,000 Stories. He has translated from Assamese and introduced celebrated Indian writers into English language. And he currently teaches at University of Georgia. The poetry collection he's going to read from this afternoon is There Is No Good Time for Bad News, which came out last year with Future Cycle Press. It was also a finalist for the 2018 Marsh Hawk Press Poetry and also a finalist for the Four-Way Books. Aruni has short stories, poems, and essays appearing in Catapult, Beach Media, the Boston Review, Electric Literature, the Oxford Anthology of Writings from Northeast, the Kenyon Review, the New York Times, and the Guardian UK. As you can see, he's a very busy person. So, Aruni, you're very welcome to read.
Thank you, Mildred, my dear friend Mildred. We have been friends forever. It's really lovely to be today in this program, and I'm so honored to read with the other two poets, Paul and Pat. I'm really looking forward for this. I hope I'm audible. If I'm not, somebody will definitely prompt me. My name is Aruni Kashyap. I'm a writer from India, from the state of Assam. And I live in Athens, Georgia at this point. This is where I work at the University of Georgia's creative writing program at the Department of English. I'm not exactly a poet. I think I'm an accidental poet. There's a really interesting story to how I started writing poetry. One of my mentors and a professor who I deeply admired and a writer who I deeply admired is Indira Goswami. She was an internationally renowned novelist who wrote in the Assamese language and taught at Delhi University, where I went to do my studies from Assam. She actually forced me to write poetry. And after she forced me, I obviously protested a lot. But I wrote one poem because she had requested me, and she had told an editor that Aruni is a very good poet. Just to keep her honor, I wrote a poem, and I never stopped after that. And she told me, I told you, you know how to write poems. And that was published in a local journal. But in 2013, I published my first novel. It's called The House with 1,000 Stories. It's set against a very brutal, bloody, armed insurgency that started in India, in Assam, in 1979. And when I was researching for my novel, I met a lot of people from semi-urban areas, urban areas, but mainly from rural India, rural Assam, who were survivors of this conflict. And they told me numerous stories. So this poetry collection is actually a tribute to the resilience of those common people. But and these are stories that didn't make it to my novel, but continue to haunt me for years and years. So even after 2013, when the novel was published, I continue to think about these people, these stories, these anecdotes, and write poems about them. The first poem is actually called The Prime Minister's Visit. And these are poems narrated by different characters, different people. And in many ways, these are people who spoke to me when I was interviewing them, actually. This is called a Prime Minister's visit. As the crowd swelled, dust flew in the air like shredded silk cotton in windy February noons. People jostled, smelling like lime, coconut water. By noon, they smelled like rotten lime, underarms, covered shirts, blouses darkened by sweat, dust, anticipation, fatigue, journeys. Our family had used a bullock cart, though the people in the village said it would be wrong not to walk to watch a great man who was almost godly. Housewives twittered like sparrows, putting on their flowery blouses, hanging earrings. They chattered about the last time they had gone to Honapur. Grandma's mother-in-law described his long nose, wondering aloud if he could smell flowers blooming in distant hills, or the perfume of dust-darkened underarms, had read all the books in the wooden almirah eroded by termites. It was difficult to get in. A young girl vomited at the entrance. Security looked on while her mother slapped her for spoiling her silk dress, her trip, her opportunity to see the long-nosed godlike man. Many of them could see only his long nose, while almost everyone saw his cap, white. My grandma, who was a young, bashful woman then, saw his hand only, about which she talked for years, sometimes laughing, sometimes with bitterness. The next poem is called My Grandmother Tells Me About the Earthquake of 1950. In 1950, there was a very huge major earthquake in the state of Assam in northeast India. It measured 8.7 in the Richter scale. People still talk about it, people who were kids at the point of time. And in the 90s, my grandmother used to talk about it all the time because she was around 7, 8 years old, I think, very young. And she experienced it. And she constantly used to tell me about this. I think she was not 7, 8 years old. I'm getting my math wrong because I'm terrible at maths. But anyway, but she was very young. My grandmother tells me about the earthquake of 1950. First, it was just the ants, like water bubbles, blood that oozes out of a wound. They emerged from their holes carrying grains of rice. We thought it was because of the impatient slanting rains that must have percolated, flooded their bedrooms, dining rooms, living rooms. But soon, even though it wasn't the season of fleeing birds, the birds left their nests. Angry crows flew from one tree to another as if one of their own had been killed. But they just cawed like frightened people. They didn't try to claw our neck, our cheeks, pierce our eyes, as if they were trying to tell us the secret knowledge of the ants, alert us, as they always did, about uninvited guests. One evening, the wild ducks, the sparrows, the kingfishers, the woodpeckers left noisily. Empty nests with eggs, nude beehives that hung from large branches, dripping golden honey in the sun, forming puddles below with no ants to drown in its sticky sweetness. It was then we knew something was coming, though we didn't expect it would be the river, because we had come to this village freeing the furies of another river that attacked paddy fields, houses, and swept away brothers, sisters, mothers, lovers, concubines. On the day it came, August 15, 1950, we were planning to gather at the school playground to sing the anthem, distribute sweets, but I fell down while tying a bun. And I thought a dacoit had entered, pushed me to take away my gold necklace. I couldn't stand up, and rattling walls told me to crawl out, screaming for your grandfather. The courtyard was slimy, with thousands of earthworms germinating from the soft soil, while water from the hot spring that had sprouted in our courtyard burned my cheeks. One of my legs stuck in a deep crack. When the trees shook their heads, we didn't know about the newborn river that had sprouted from the chest of a nearby mountain. We didn't know it was 1 million times stronger than the bomb called Fat Man. We didn't know that the creator of Fat Man and Little Boy had looked at the test explosion and recited the chant from the Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Even without you, every warrior in the enemy camp will cease to be. But the ants and the birds and the howling dogs and foxes knew. So they left, so they howled, barked. I'm going to read another poem. Um, this poem is called An Invitation to Murder Me. As I said, these poems are about these poems are about state violence, about the long drawn insurgency that happened in Assam, in the state of Assam, and how people have sort of responded to this. And I'm trying to record some of these memories because I want people to remember them. An Invitation to Murder Me is written in the form of a person who's inviting the insurgents to kill her instead of killing children. An invitation to murder me. It is very easy to kill me. Every morning I go for a walk. I walk through the perimeter of the 1,000-year-old rectangular pond where lovers sit or jump every evening. The handy girls' college is always to my right. At the turn, I reach the entrance of the pond again. To go ahead, I take another turn in front of the State Museum to reach my small apartment next to the pond, face the High Court, and turn right. My apartment is small. There isn't much protection either. Before sleeping, I lock my door with a Godrej lock. It is rusted, time-worn, from the days of my grandmother. A single blow with a rock or a hammer would destroy it with a thud, spreading rust on the floor. You can break in, and if you let me know early, I will leave the door open. You don't even have to spend a bullet on me. No need to plant a time bomb. Just press a pillow on my face. I will stop breathing. To kill me, you don't have to go all the way to the upper reaches of the river. To kill me, you don't need a bomb. I hoist the national flag every day on Independence Day, though the nation gives me reason to be ashamed every day. So you should target me, not little kids who go to Independence Day with the hope of eating sweets because they love to sing patriotic songs without knowing their meaning, because Independence Day is a holiday for them. Their little limbs, burned skin, severed, heads as small as dolls they carried are still on the grass. Instead of killing more babies, please come and kill me. I'm an ordinary person. I use an old lock in an old apartment to protect myself. From the invasion of hatred, you will not need bombs. You will not need guns, bullets. You will just need a pillow. This poem is called The Militant's Mother. Um, and it is a tribute to both Ezra Pound's poem. I think anybody who reads Ezra Pound or is familiar with great poems from the time from the canonical literature, they would know which poem I'm talking about. But Ezra Pound's poem, A River Merchant's Wife, was also very popular in Assam because the poet Hem Borwa, he actually wrote a poem called Mamatar City, which means Mamata's letter, which is kind of almost everybody in Assam knows Ezra Pound's poem and also Mamatar City, which is a very popular poem in Assam. And I thought of sort of tapping into this tradition to talk about contemporary history. In both this, in especially Mamatar City, the poem, in Assamese poem, which is a response to Ezra Pound, personal history is something that is foregrounded about a woman. Here, a woman is writing a letter to her militant son. The militant's mother, a letter. After Ezra Pound and Hambolwa. Mortimer Baba, I have just lit a candle to write to you after a very long time. Mortimer Baba, we have so many hopes heaped on you. You'll do well, ace the exams, go to Cotton College to study, become an Indian administrative officer, and return home with cars, red lights, and sirens that would wake the village from the stupor. Your father startles at night. He hasn't forgotten how the officer asked him to frog jump in front of his students for raising you. Hasn't forgotten how he wasn't allowed to wear his dhoti. After it slipped down, he frog jumped 40 times in his underwear from one end of the field to the other until he reached the silk cotton tree. And when the women moved their faces away and his students looked down at their own feet, the police shot a dog and screamed, look at him, look at him. But Baba, if you come once, he would forget all the pain. He would move his hands over your soft hair and say, Ahili, what will you eat? What will you eat, Baba? Baba will love you. Don't doubt it. We know that you have read more books. You have thought about the world more than us. But I want to see you once more. I want to know if you are eating well, if you have lost weight. Please come once again so that I can look at your face and say, Ahili, I'll serve your favorite payal with lots of cinnamon. I will cook your favorite fish tanga with fewer green chilies. Don't avoid visiting us. Do come. Even if someone informs the officer, we want you here. Your aunt hung herself from a large jackfruit tree after the officer touched her, Baba. Your brother left for the city after they hammered sharp pins in his fingertips because he couldn't tell them where you live, what your next plan is. Remember the silk cotton tree at the end of the village last month? A strong bolt of lightning burned it down. Now it is covered by a yellow parasitic plant. The village elders say it is not a good sign. I'm worried it means it will take longer for you to come. Remember the dog that was shot dead? I have adopted her 2 puppies. Now 7 years old. They guard her house. They don't know how their mother was killed. Only I know. Only your father knows. Only the village knows. But the river that carries the reflection of the sky, it knows everything, including how your father, who stares at the skies most of the day, feels. Sincerely, your mother. P.S. Baba, please come. Send news with the milkman or the fish seller like you usually do. When the fish seller brings a bunch of Boriola fish and suggests cooking it with mustard, I know what he means. I promise you, when you are coming down from the river, Tamiludava River, I will walk up to its bank to receive you, as far as Koramora, where the horse died. Thank you so much. I think I'm going to end here. I have finished my quota of 15 minutes. Thank you very much for patiently listening to my poems.
Mildred, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Aruni. That was powerful. And sorry about the mute unmute. I didn't realize what was happening. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Pat Riviere-Seel, who is our second reader. She is the author of 3 poetry collections, including Nothing Below But Air, The Serial Killer's Daughter, and No Turning Back Now. For many years, 15, she taught poetry classes for UNC Asheville's Great Smokies writing program, and also served as the North Carolina Poetry Society's distinguished poet in the Western region from 2016 to 2018. In 2017, Pat received the Charlie Award from the Carolina Mountains Literary Festival. And she's also worked as a newspaper journalist, editor, publicist, and lobbyist for non-profit organizations in the Maryland State House. Pat, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Mildred, and thank you, Malaprops, and all of you who are there that I can't see. I miss the live audience, but this is a wonderful opportunity to share some poems on this cold, rainy day. I'm coming to you from Burnsville, North Carolina, up in the mountains, and it's a little chilly today, so I thought I would start off by warming things up just a bit. This first poem I'm going to read is from my newest collection, When There Were Horses. That one came out just in September. And this poem is titled Desire. There's an epigraph that goes with this poem from a story in the Washington Post dated December 31st, 2007. The story was about the demolition or the renovation of the Hotel Washington in Washington, D.C. And the epigraph is, "From this roof in this city, once upon a time, you could pretend to be anything you wanted to be. Desire." We were walking through Georgetown, back to my car after dinner, when a man called out to you, "Senator, flowers for your lady." You shook your head and we walked faster, laughing. I wanted you to buy the flowers, but you were no senator and I was not your lady. We had spent hours wandering side streets, reading menus, saying we didn't care what we ate. True enough, we just needed something to keep ourselves upright and separated, swallowing steaming mussels, dripping butter, salty, sweet as afternoon kisses. A little warmer now. This next poem is also from my book, When There Were Horses, and it started out an exercise on to write a poem giving someone directions. So this is titled, How to Get Where You Need to Go. Start with gratitude. Start with the bug that crawled across your napkin, the one you thought was a centipede before you counted legs. Or start with the first conscious breath you took before you opened your eyes, before you became aware of waking. Bless the bug, bless the breath. Keep practicing gratitude for the small things. Unhitch the rusty trailer of expectations. It's too heavy a load for a Kia Soul to pull. Trade in your Kia for a white convertible. Toss out all the maps. Disable the GPS. Just drive. Take a left turn. Take a right turn. A wrong turn. Turn onto the gravel road and sing. Turn up the volume. Turn into your life, the one you've been waiting for. I'm going to move to this book for one poem. This is Nothing Below But Air, and the cover was taken from a painting by my very talented cousin, Chris Riviere-Blaylock, and she graciously did the cover for me. She's a very talented artist, and this is the title poem from this book. It came from an exercise when I was in grad school. One of my mentors and teachers, the poet, Major Jackson, suggested that I put pictures of myself, a younger self, around the room and write poems to this younger self. So this is the poem, one of the poems that came from that exercise. What Emmett Saw. I outran a storm as he took aim, his lens focused on distant clouds. Next morning, my anonymous back appeared in black and white, front page, local section. Gathering storm, the caption read. I held a back bend till my spine almost snapped so he could photograph my profile against the setting sun. I mounted rooftops, shook my rusty curls over staircase railings. I shimmied into trees and once sat hours under white lights, watching him watch me. Behind the bellows, he framed a girl whose portrait won him Best in Show. It hangs now on my bedroom wall, passport to the days with Emmett, who embraced grassy slopes, winter limbs, captured the woman I was becoming. It was the year I exploded, my first husband gone before I turned 20, good sense abandoned. I coiled a copperhead, ready to sink my fangs into kindness. showed up drunk or stoned, canceled dates, used every curse word I knew, but banished all endearments. Emmett endured. I did everything he asked, even outwalked the railroad trestle at dawn in a white bikini, stumbling, heavy with sleep, my feet perched on a metal rail, and nothing below but air. Now, the mirror side of that is really looking ahead. And that's what this next poem does. It takes a look at a future self. The poem is titled Enough. Ahead, I see her watching me. Pity or compassion, hard to tell from this distance. I want to ask her, my future self, what she knows and when she knew it. I want to know whose laughter fills her hours. Does she still dance? Still run? Does she know? What does she know of grace? These days I know so little, but she's still faithful, the self I look back to see at dawn a quarter century ago, running out Colbert Creek Road, between woods and murmur of the South Toe River, 2-lane Highway 80 South, past Mount Mitchell Golf Course, down macadam that turns into gravel, clatter across the low water bridge, out Rock Creek Road, before she turns toward her dusty driveway, past grapevines, the garden where the black cat waits to walk her home. She's the one who declared, I am enough. She's kept her promise. But now knowledge brings scrap falling from bone that offers proof. Something happened here in this lost country. 3 deaths, 1 new love. I moved to Yancey County, in the early 90s, and I moved here from Annapolis, Maryland, and it was a major change. This is a very rural area. There are no street lights where I live, and I moved into an old farmhouse that had no heat, no central heat, a metal roof that leaked, and the bedroom where I slept had windows that were just about even with the ground. So on nights when there was a full moon, the moonlight would just fill the bedroom windows, and it was magnificent. So I developed this intimate relationship with the moon. And in the last few years, I began wondering what it would be like to be the moon, to be able to fill the night sky with all that light. This poem is called What the Moon Knows. She knows shadow, how to slip behind clouds. She's perfected the art of disappearing. She knows how to empty herself into the sky, whisper light into darkness. She knows the power of silence, how to keep secrets, even as men leave footprints in the dust, try to claim her. Waxing and waning, she summons the tides. Whole and wholly simple, she remains perfect truth, tranquility. Friend and muse, she knows the hearts of lovers and lunatics. She knows she is not the only one that fills the sky, but the sky is her only home. I'm going to read a new poem. I like to throw in at least one new poem. And Paul Jones and I have been doing some readings together, and I've been reading his book, and he does a lot of writing in form. I don't do a lot of writing in form, at least nothing that I would read publicly. But this is one that seemed to ask for a little more formal telling. The poem is First Snowfall. Gray sky above the far ridge. Clouds hold a sense of waiting, for what might or might not happen. The forecast calls for snow. Clouds hold a sense of waiting as the outside temperature drops. The forecast calls for snow. Two cats curl tight as rhododendron leaves. As the outside temperature drops, I balance thoughts between hope and fear, while two cats curl tight as rhododendron leaves. Nothing left to do but wait. I balance thoughts between hope and fear. Winter's first snowfall could strand me here, with nothing left to do but wait. My mind plays games of chance. Winter's first snowfall could strand me here, longing for what might or might not happen. My mind plays games of chance, with a gray sky filled with wanting. I think I've got time for just a couple more poems. I'm going to read one that I wrote in response to a poem by Linda Paston, The Almanac of Last Things. This poem is The Almanac of Broken Things. I choose this earth that breaks my heart again and again. The woods that, for the way trees bend, fall, return to dirt. I choose the sand dollar, the nautilus that in brokenness finds new creation. I choose the favorite doll that no longer cries, loved into silence, into rags. I choose the memory of a stranger's touch that lifted my face above water. Because I did not drown, I choose morning, the gauzy gray dawn that returns. I choose the once wild palomino whose beauty can never be tamed. I choose light from long dead stars that illuminates without heat. I choose March with its promise of spring, the warm days that tease, the blizzard that insulates and warms, the bulbs, the seeds, all that lies beneath the surface, waiting. I'm going to end with the title poem. This is a poem that I have a visitor. She escaped. This is the poem that I wrote when I was in residence at Weymouth Center and Southern Pines. And I had the idea, a line came into my head, when there were horses. And then immediately I thought, when there were horses, there was a cat here. And here the cat appears on cue. And I thought I would start a poem with that, but I didn't. But the line found its way into this poem, which became the title poem, When There Were Horses. I miss the hammocks, the teenagers swinging between trees, high-pitched laughter, urgent talk. Sometimes at night, their laughter would float through the house's open windows. They were so alive, innocent, sweet as freshly cut hay. The future, an unnamed galaxy. Riders still gallop horses across the field into the woods, but now empty picnic tables replace hammocks along the perimeter. Last week, a man spent 2 days mowing, mechanical hum measuring the hours. Today, when I walked out near dusk, a black Mercedes parked beside the gate. In the middle of the field, a man and a woman lay on a blanket, feeding each other sun-baked brie spread on a French baguette. Maybe they are lovers who wait until the sun sets, then shed their clothes, offer their bodies to God, desire unbridled. When there were horses stabled here, there was a cat that asked for love, the way cats do, running figure eights around your legs, arching her back. I loved like that once. The man said he had always loved me. Maybe he had. Maybe he never loved me. It no longer matters what is true. I head back to the house, searching for the car, now lost in darkness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Paul Jones, who is going to read some poems from Something Wonderful and whatever else he decides. Paul Jones has published poetry in many journals, including the Southern Poetry Review, Ohio Review, Georgia Review, Ironwood, River Heron Review, and Broadkill, as well as in cookbooks and travel anthologies. Recently, he was nominated for 2 Pushcart Prizes and 2 Best of the Web awards. His chapbook is What the Welsh and Chinese Have in Common. Jones is Vice President of the Board of Trustees of the North Carolina Writers Network, as well as a board member of the North Carolina Poetry Society and a member of the Carlsboro Poets Council. Paul, you're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here, even though here isn't exactly in Asheville. For me, here is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where it's a nice 64 degrees outside. I'm going to start with a poem that actually has its genesis in the Asheville area, where my great-grandmother was a card reader, a palmist, and a medium. Clear Channel. My grandmother staked her lot with her signs: Cleopatra Fortune, reader, and canary breeder. She tugged me to her side and showed me her white bird. Through her few teeth, she hissed her words. The mildewed air washed her swollen ankles. She shuffled as if manacles kept her there. She dissolved into the chair. Give me your palm, and you'll dream your true name, she said. But I made a fist and fled upstairs. I dove under covers with the radio's blast pushed to my ear. A signal across the clear channel carried an earnest Cuban voice that warned of reds. Between ballads, someone sold olive oil, religion, and dark cigars. A crackle came. Then a samba. Soon that stopped, and static grew like the language of the spirits I knew grandmother knew. Half naked, I half heard a hovering overhead and nearly said, black wings, black day. The next thing was that song, beckoning. I tossed my little radio off the bed, let canary songs fly into my head. The power went out. What I knew of darkness grew as thick as doubt. Against the blackness, I held out my hand until a step on the stairs creaked. Grandmother. From the cool air, I took the name she said, and the music of late night bloomed glad. The next poem is called Against Desirelessness. The heart needs more than quiet, more than a home without desire. Sorry, old masters. Before I can let go, won't I need to be holding on, refusing to let something loose? In my fist, I hold the aroma of spring, of roses, of mown grass. In my ear, I can still hear the creek and the wren's song turned to scold as the snake comes down the tree from her emptied nest. The touch of the breeze as I open my palm. The next poem is about praying mantises. It's called Pairing Manads. He has only one job to do, and she, with her hunger, her need to feed the future without him by consuming him, has a lot to get done before winter. His head tilts slightly, like a sinner at communion, like a teen expecting his first kiss to be like lightning. Then his body starts to do the work it was built to do. She turns toward him and wipes off his face. He knows it's all over, but his body keeps on, unknowing itself. His is the kind of stupid happiness you can only appreciate at a distance. The kind you know cannot be as good as it looks. Hers is the work of duty and a different devotion. While he takes her from behind, she takes him head first, just as she took the yellow-striped hornet who would have taken her to his own hideaway, just as she took the grasshopper who was tired of summer, just as she took the large green moth who had no mouth of its own. She ignored those magnificent wings, let them fall, as she ignores the thrusting body that falls away from hers. He dies two deaths at once, the deaths of love and of life. But the moment between, before it all ends, is the moment of his glory and the beginning of her toil. I do this, I do that. I stay in bed too long most days. I boil water when half awake, then forget to add the coffee. I'm out of tea. I feel the cold floor on my bare feet. I could put on socks or turn up the heat. I do nothing much. I worry about animals, here and in Africa, and the last cloud leopard. I want to write a check and make their lives better. I'm out of stamps. I want to call a friend who is still in Vietnam, but it's noon here and midnight there. I call anyway, as if he could answer. The next poem is a triolet called The Saint of Trees. What is the proper sacrifice to please our Lord, the Saint of Trees? I ask the ferns for their advice. What is the proper sacrifice? Lie here and dream of paradise, sink into the soil like leaves. That is the proper sacrifice to please our Lord, the Saint of Trees. The next poem is about a couple of guys that are coping with the pandemic and other things going on in the world through Zoom. It's called The Impossibility of America. I finally come to grips with the impossibility of America, Bill told me on our weekly Zoom call. We check in and drink whiskey and compare birds that come to our feeders and suet blocks. The damn thing looks like a pterodactyl and sounds like a fucking jackhammer, I said about the pileated woodpecker that woke me up that morning. He was a silhouette, black behind the low sun, but his crest caught the morning light and flashed red, its true color. Just a little revealing, and I knew then who he was. I heard his cackle, like the cartoon, like that Kay Kaiser song. My mother sang that song the year she died. She was remembering things that made her happy. He gives his rivals the bird, she hooted out, and the fat nurse attendant blushed red but laughed. Getting back to America, Bill interrupted. I can only see it in darkness. I can, like old Walt Whitman, hear its various songs. I know it, almost, but more as a watercolor of a memory. I can't see the future in this light. But something about it, something still makes me happy, gives me hope. The next is a character that I like a lot, Betty. This is Betty's current status. I've got a boombox I bought in 1985. I only play 2 tapes, Beastie Boys and 9 to 5. I found it in the attic when I finally got divorced. It's the one reason I'm still alive. That and a cat named Beetlejuice and a son in California who FaceTimes me twice a week. And a check from the bastard with whom I never speak. Not even a check really, but an e-transfer from his lawyer into my account from that no account. I quit buying razors. I quit buying Nair. Grow where the hell you like, I say to my body hair. Not that I don't care, but instead I found some value there, some beauty really. My reflection wasn't their perfection anymore. I'm the one who can, after some adult pottery classes, turn mud into a plate, into a vase, into a magic mask. The mask has a way to see and be seen more clearly. The mask has one eye a bit cockeyed, a nose a little off center, with one nostril flared. Not like the photo I made for Match. That one is posed, lit up, touched up, softened up, made up, and smoothed out. That one got 200 messages in 36 hours. What took you so long, guys? One message I might have answered began, I too have known tragedy. At our age, who hasn't? I almost read it. I felt a kinship there, but a distant one, like the shadow image of a family photo of a forgotten third cousin. I held the mask between me and the screen. He knows how to play the records, honey, but you know those grooves too well. You know those moves, said the mask. The mask ain't illin'. The mask knows the truth. Some places it's all taken and no given. Pass me the scalpel and I'll make the incision. I make my own decisions. I cut out the part of my brain that goes on suicide missions. I mean, Beetlejuice has his favorite box, and I've got mine. I turned all the mirrors in the house around so they won't shine. The next poem is the title poem from the book, Something Wonderful. And it also has 2 voices in conversation. Let me mention something wonderful, she said. Bats eat darkness. I see them shadowing the streetlight, I said, diving to feed, like hungry fish in a small light pond. They leap out of darkness as if breaking the water's surface, as if for a moment that alien world, that other, was their home. Bats feed as darkness breaks. No, bats break into darkness to feed. Light warns them, you can't stay. Think fireflies at the end of the day. Their lights shine the bats away. But aren't those lights a begging to breed, not just a sign of bitter taste? As with passion, they say, come here and keep apart for now. Right now, bats break the darkness to feed. Fireflies flash to breed. Each rules his own kingdom. Darkness makes a boundary to break. Some dive, some flash to mark the edge. To transgress is to bless the penumbra, the live difference. Don't we rise from earth? Isn't our time soaring in this life a flash, a hope for love? We see the lures, but we know we must be fed by darkness and are born to taste the bitter light, the sweet, then bitter light. And I'd like to close. Pat, you may have noticed there is some varieties of formality in all of these. This one's a hinged double sonnet for those that are keeping score at home, about bread. Bread. Pick up a round of bread and tear it. All the mountains you see are snowy, and the valleys too. The glow of it, as if winter had been waiting there in its regularity, its need to own the earth, to remake landscapes, a world where nothing that is cut bleeds. The edges of this world rise like snakes. Look closely and see their fangs and scales. They're dragons at world's edge, always awake. Some have grown brown wings and sweeping tails. Bread's ragged edges are periphery. The crust holds in bread's true mysteries. The charmed life of yeast and all that entails. Yeast, many charms. What does that entail? Their gasp give bread its rising mystery. Gases grown in gluten's periphery. Neither plant nor animal, no heads nor tails. Water, grain, and a little warmth awake these beasts without skin, feathers, or scales. In their house of dough, they writhe like snakes. They die when bread is baked, but never bleed, as their bodies build the unique landscapes, mountains and caves you hope for as you need, wishing winter into the dough. There, inside the browning crust, yeast grows in fits. Yeast, in half an hour, make their snowy scenes. Thank the yeast, then raise the bread and tear it. Thank you. And thank you, Pat and Aruni, and thanks everyone at Malaprops for helping put this on.
Thank you so much, Paul Jones. And we have a few minutes left. So this is the time when I like to get in touch with my audience, my listeners out there, and see if they have a question for either all the poets or any one of the poets. And while I wait for any questions to come in, I take the pleasure to ask the first one, which is really why poetry? Why poetry for you?
For me, it is because poetry is so deep, and yet it can be very often pretty short. And I can do something that is deep like a well, but at the same time takes less space. But you keep on, the deeper you go, the different you feel, the more you discover. So, and as opposed to a novel, which is much expansive. But I like poetry because of the space it takes. It is so humble. It just takes this, but it's very, very deep rooted, very deep. That's why it's for me, poetry.
For me, it's a connection both to the past and a hope for the future. It's global, but it's shared in all cultures, and we learn each other through our sharing of song, the basis of it. Personally, it's also a way to reach back to not only the voices that have built literature to this point and to participate somewhat in that swim, everything from runes marking on a stone to small disc taking poems to the moon or beyond.
For me, I found that I can say things in poetry that I could not say in prose. Poetry always surprises me because it is wordplay. It is play. Neruda said we poets are silly people. And we are, though the subjects often are very serious subjects. It's still, there is always that element of play in poetry. And I'm currently working on a memoir, so I'm writing prose too. And I had started out writing some poems that address some of the areas in the memoir, but I found that prose was the better medium. So I tend to go back and forth. I go to poetry partly because I need to, but also because of that certain play and putting words together.
Thank you. You've kind of taken us into the next question because it says, could the poets talk about what they are working on now? So the other two poets, I guess you're working on the memoir. So I think we need to hear from Paul and Aruni what they are working on now.
I've turned out to be partway through, I'm about 60 poems in on the next book. This one is more a miscellany, and the other one, the one coming, has a lot to do with sort of I did a lot of international travel into some unusual places: southeastern Turkey, eastern Siberia, northwestern India, and under various aegises. So these poems will reflect some of the things that happened there, and some time in Ireland around where things were not in violent upheaval, but in unsteadiness. And so these poems are kind of trying to look into that space.
Where did you go to northwestern India, Paul? Did you say northwestern India?
Yeah, Dharamshala.
Oh, wow. Okay, lovely place.
So I had some work with the Dalai Lama's, the Tibetan government in exile.
Mm-hmm.
And so supposedly was doing something in Delhi, but the Tibetans then sent down a driver and took me up there, and we spent about a week.
Wow, I can't wait to read about his experience or maybe talk to you. I'll get in touch with you on Instagram to talk more about that. Yeah,
okay.
That's exciting.
It's all about building a resilient technology up there for various Tibetan groups.
Right. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, Mildred, yeah, everyone, I'm really, I finished translating a novel from Assamese to English, and Penguin Random House is going to bring it out. It's called, tentatively titled, My Poems Are Not For Your Ad Campaign. It's a really fascinating novel, one of my favorite novels, where a person who is working in a copyright agency writes a poem and leaves it on her desk. And when her boss finds it and he wants to use it buy it, and he said, this is not for sale. And that leads to a huge conflict, because he says, I'm going to write you poems, but not this one. And he wanted that one. So it's a really beautiful, beautiful novel set in Calcutta. But I'm really excited about my next translation project, which I just started translating. And I've done like 2 chapters only. This is about 2 Americans who called Nathan Brown and Miles Bronson, who went to Assam in 1836 and started the first Assamese language journal. They also wrote the first Assamese to English dictionary. They set up schools. They're part of the Baptist mission, but they're also very sort of progressive in their vision. And they really lived in Assam. And most importantly, this magazine became such a great space for Assamese modern prose to develop. Like today, I'm writing in the kind of Assamese because of the contributions of these 2 really important historical figures. But it looks like America has forgotten them. Nobody in America knows about them. But they have written a lot of books, memoirs, essays, diary entries. There's a lot of reportage about them in the archives. So I'm translating a novel that is based on the lives of these people. So I'm in fact announcing this publicly for the first time, because I have been sort of living with this secret, of being in 1836 Assam and colonial Assam. And what these 2 Americans did was so important and so fascinating. The novel is by Deepak Kumar Borkakoti. It's called Udbhashito Upakul, which kind of is roughly translated as the Illuminated Valley at this point as a working title. So I'm really immersed in early 19th century Assam at this point and translating this novel.
Thank you. And I think that brings us to the end, but Paul, you do have one question which I think you can respond to very quickly about, it's coming from George Frink. He loves bats and he wants to know whether they are real bats or a firefly place in your work.
Well, they're real bats in the poem, of course. In the background, this is a 19th century illustration for children to help them understand animals of the world. So that's the picture. But fireflies do not eat bats because, I mean, other way around. Bats don't eat fireflies because they're too bitter. They don't like them. And there's actually been some scientific experiments about like trying to feed bats fireflies, and bats won't take them. They just, it doesn't have to do with that. And that flashing is a sign to a lot of predators that they don't taste good, but it's also a come on to fireflies of the opposite sex to come on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Paul Jones and Pat Riviere-Seel and Aruni Kashyap for reading, sharing your work with us this afternoon. And to my audience out there, the listeners, make sure to tune in next month, the first Sunday of the month. It's going to be the 6th of February, and we're going to celebrate Black poetry readers. Thank you so much. My name is Mildred Badia. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.